Hi, welcome to the internet. Did you guys see my last video that I just put up with no thumbnail, no real title? You know, I've always kind of wondered if people would actually click on a video I put up where there's just no custom thumbnail, it's just a picture of me. And surprisingly, that video got pretty much the same amount of views, regardless of how lazy I was with it. I couldn't do that for every video, but this one should be at least a little bit better. Deny my request to move from hourly to salary, then dump all this extra work on me? Cool, thanks for the extra paycheck. So years ago, I worked as the sole hourly employee on a team of salaried workers. This designation had been a mistake on my initial contract, and my cool boss said she would switch me to salary just as soon as my first year contract was up. Unfortunately for me, just before my anniversary, my cool boss left and a crappy coworker got promoted. Request denied. No reason given other than, I don't think it's necessary. A few weeks later, we had this event that had been planned by a cool boss. But since she left the company, it fell to my new crappy boss and the rest of us workers to staff it. The location for this event was nearly an hour away from the office. Everyone else could just show up to the location, but being hourly, I had to go first to the office, clock in, and then drive an hour. Oh well, guess I get paid for travel time. The night before the event, we had hired a set building team to put everything together, but someone from our company had to stay until they were finished, per contract with the location. The crappy boss decided to make me stay, as I was her least favorite. So the rest of the team left and went home. Well, there were major issues with the set, and by 10 p.m. it was just me and the one set builder left in the place, as he was trying to make this thing work. Set builder didn't care as he was making a ton of overtime, and besides, this particular configuration had been 100% his idea, so he was determined to solve it. I decided I didn't care because I had found some cushions to sleep on. I ended up dozing from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. when he finally finished and we could leave. I then drove an hour to the office, clocked out and went home, which was thankfully a short drive. I had an hour to shower, change, and go back to the office to clock in, then drive an hour to meet everyone back at the location at 8 a.m. We then worked the event with the crappy boss, again assigning me to stay later than her to supervise breakdown. So, in a 36-hour window, I ended up being on the clock for 33 of those hours. Monday morning, the crappy boss has to approve and submit payroll, and only then does she realize that she has to pay me time and a half for those 33 hours. She actually has the gall to be mad at me for not warning her about the overtime. Which made me laugh as I explained, I didn't think that was necessary since it was your idea to keep me on hourly, boss. Man, that actually sounds great. Why does anybody want salary? Oh, Faye, you just splashed eye juice on me when you shook your head like that. Tried to explain why we don't do refunds and accidentally destroyed an old couple's argument. So it happened weeks ago, but I'm still thinking about it, so maybe it's worth publishing. So a couple went through the till without trying any of their clothing on. Minutes later, they came back in after apparently trying it on in their car, complaining nothing fit them, and then demanded a refund. Naturally, when they got pissed that we are exchange only, the cashier redirected them to me, the supervisor. I told them that since the transaction happened minutes ago, I could do a refund, but then explained, this is something I do, but it's not a company policy. How much was your item? He says, it was the whole $35 transaction. The reason we don't do refunds is because as a thrift store, we wouldn't make any money, because people would just return their stuff once they're done with it. So it's exchange only. I told them this, and that this was a lot of money to give back, so this is the only time I'll do it for them. The couple immediately laughed and told me $35 is not a lot of money. If it's not a lot of money, why do you need it back? I asked them. After my lapse of professionalism, they stood there, silently glowering at me, as I went on to tell them to try our fitting rooms to avoid this in the future, and to have a nice day. Yes, I did keep their returned items in my arms until they left, then put it back so I knew they weren't gonna just take it behind my back to get free crap. You know, I honestly think it's strange that thrift stores don't make very much money, because I mean, all of the items they sell are donated, so I would think they would have like a 100% profit margin. I guess it's just because everything there is so cheap, they just don't make much money off of it. Entitled Mom demands I fight an evil airline in her daughter's behalf right this instant. So I used to work taking calls for the airport. I ran into an Entitled Mom once, and I can't forget that call, so here I am. So there's this Spanish airline called Vueling that's kinda crappy. We used to get loads of complaints about them, be it because of cancelled flights, delays, lost luggage, you name it. The thing is, of course the airport and the airlines that operate within it are in fact completely different companies, and a lot of people straight up didn't understand that. You have a problem with Vueling? You call Vueling. Should be an easy enough concept to grasp, but alas. So it was a pretty calm autumn night, around 10 p.m. This lady calls, screaming from the get-go because her daughter's flight has been delayed, and she is supposed to attend a medical convention early the next morning in another city. So she absolutely can't lose this flight. Well, Vueling is pretty bad with late-night delays. A late-night delay more often than not means the flight is cancelled. What normally happened then is that both air and ground crew would disappear, and show up again once the logistics of what the heck to do with the passengers were solved, which could take hours. In the meantime, nobody would tell them crap. A cancelled flight SMS might or might not be sent. That's it. Of course, Vueling doesn't take calls past 8 p.m. The airport does. Lucky us. This lady's daughter had already been waiting 2 hours. She wouldn't entertain the notion that the flight was probably cancelled and all that was left to do was wait. We went in circles for a while because she wanted the airport to force Vueling to make the flight happen. That's obviously not a thing we could do. 5 minutes of us going nowhere went by. I should have ended the call, but it was a slow night. I was bored and immune to yelling. My coworkers didn't have much to do and noticed I had been at it for a while, so I turned the speaker on. Right around the time this woman was explaining that people would stop flying because of this travesty, and I wouldn't be able to feed my children, and if her daughter died waiting for this plane, that made us all accomplices. We were hooked. I stopped answering at this point. My input obviously wasn't needed, and she went nuts. We should call the president or the army and save her daughter right this instant. I offered to give him a call if she provided his number, and she dropped that idea. Bummer. She also found the time to ask if I knew what guardian angels were. I knew, kinda. Well, both of them and God take care of their creatures, unlike us. Lady, what? It went on and on. I can't even remember all the crazy stuff she screamed. I do remember that she, of course, didn't miss the chance of telling me that since I wasn't born here, I didn't have a heart and I couldn't understand how beautiful Barcelona used to be before. Before when? Who knows? She ended up losing steam and ended the call after 20 minutes of uninterrupted screaming. I thought this was the end of that, but I was wrong. My coworker got a call from the daughter herself after a while, but she was perfectly polite and understood right away that there was nothing we could do about her cancelled flight. I'm aware that this story makes us look like the a-holes, laughing at someone else's misfortune. To be honest, a call center environment is unforgiving and makes you insensitive rather quickly. And while I do empathize with the daughter's predicament, I think the mother went about it in the wrong, but entertaining, way. I mean, basically the definition of entitled people is just, if you yell at something long enough, everything will go your way eventually. I like how you guys can just barely see the ears of Faye right here. There she is. Would I be naked if I worked here? So I went clothes shopping today. The dressing room had a 6-item limit, and I had more than 6 things to try on, so I left some things with the dressing room clerk at the desk. I folded up the things I'd tried on that I wasn't buying and brought them to the clerk and exchanged them for new items. As I was doing this, a woman tapped me on the shoulder saying, Hey, carry these in here, please." I guess assuming I was a clerk too. I don't work here." "Sure you do, I just saw you folding clothes." "I was returning those items. I'm in a hurry here, excuse me." And I walked off because I didn't have time to get into it with her and try on everything I needed to. "Hey!" She followed me. Thankfully the desk clerk saw her and went over to help her, so she left me be. I went in the changing room, put on an outfit, and stepped out to see it in the full-length mirror. Bear in mind that I had changed my clothes at this point. I don't know how this didn't make it clear that I was shopping. But she asked, "Can you get this for me in a smaller size?" I pretended not to hear her and rushed back to my dressing room to avoid the confrontation. Apparently I was in such a hurry that I did not properly latch the door. Because, sliding the dress overhead, tits flopping out in the breeze, this woman follows after me and opens the door. I take the dress off and see her staring mouth agape, and she just says, "You really don't work here, do you?" Stunned, but mostly irritated, I reply with, "Would I be naked if I worked here?" She walked away. I shut the door and finished up. When I came out to give my next round of items to the clerk, the woman was waiting for me. She apologized over and over and said she'd been on autopilot all day. I told her not to worry about it and I hope she enjoyed the show. I wonder what the clerk thought happened. Well, as we all know, the power to fold clothes is only granted to those who work at department stores. So if you ever see somebody folding clothes, you know that they must work there. Entitled Dad wants to trade a Happy Meal toy for my son's $40 toy. Let me preface this with, my son loves to share. If he has one piece of candy left and you ask him for it, say it's your favorite, he will either give it to you or split it in half so you can have some. He enjoys things much more if he shares them, so you can enjoy it too. That's just how he is. Also, we are on a pretty strict budget, so he doesn't receive rewards or presents except on special occasions. My son is 6, and we just came home from a parent-teacher conference, and we were told he was doing great. So we stopped at the store on the way home to let him pick out a toy as a reward. He picks out a $40 Iron Man toy. This toy would light up, was about up to his knee, just a cool, fun Iron Man. Upon arriving home, he sees Entitled Boy and Entitled Girl outside playing, so he immediately wants to go outside and show them his new toy and play with them. I'm watching them from the window. I see the girl go to her house and come back with one of the Iron Man toys that came from a McDonald's Happy Meal. The girl gives the Happy Meal Iron Man to my son, grabs his Iron Man and the boy, and runs back to the house. I run outside and am met by my son, who's crying. He tells me that they took his Iron Man and gave him the Happy Meal one as a trade. I am livid. I march over to their house and the entitled dad comes to the door. I explain what happened and tell them that I want my son's toys back. He tries to tell me that my son agreed to the trade, and that they are both Iron Man, so what's the difference? Meanwhile, I see the entitled kids behind him playing, roughly with my son's toy. After about 15 minutes of arguing, with a very sad 6-year-old by my side, I finally threaten to call the cops. The entitled dad tells the entitled kids to give back the toy. They tell him, "No, we like this Iron Man better." The entitled dad tells the kids that he will get them the same Iron Man next week when he gets paid, and the kids still tell him no. The entitled dad tells me that they can keep it, but they have to give it back when he gets them one. I interrupt him, saying, "No, they cannot keep my son's toy. That was his reward for doing good in school." Well, the girl then smashes Iron Man on the floor, breaking the arm off him. My son starts bawling. The dad and the kids start laughing, and the girl just says, "Oops, he can have it back now." I take my devastated son home with his broken Iron Man. It's getting late at this point, and I tell my son that I'll take the Iron Man to the hospital when he's sleeping, so his arm can get fixed. But he has to get some sleep so I can take him. About an hour after my son is asleep, there's a knock on our door. It's another neighbor. She tells me that she saw part of it, and the entitled dad bragged to her husband about it. She also tells me that she does daycare for the entitled kids, and they often act like that. Well, our awesome neighbor proceeds to hand me a brand new Iron Man, just like my son's. I thank her, but tell her I couldn't accept that. She laughs and said that she's putting the cost on the entitled dad's daycare bill, so he's actually paying for it. I accept and invite her in for a glass of wine. Needless to say, the Iron Man came out of the hospital looking brand new, and my son was ecstatic. He also stopped playing with the entitled kids. Well, I guess it's lucky you had some magical, all-knowing neighbor that just happened to have the perfect solution for it. If only we all had one of those. Well, now we get to answer the question, what's the furthest you've gone just to prove your point? I struggled to get something I needed from another coworker, CAD design drawings, and it was taking months. I told him that I could go to night school and learn AutoCAD and do it myself in the time it would take him to get the drawings back to me. He said, whatever. So I went to night class, learned AutoCAD, produced my own drawings, and cut him out of the equation. A few months later, he was fired. I guess other employees were having the same difficulty. Hey, I had to learn AutoCAD to work for my dad. It's not too difficult. Years ago, I told my wife I wanted to create a home media room in the basement with a really big TV and premium sound system, etc. The whole works. The problem was, the basement was undeveloped. She said, sure, you can have that, but you have to develop the basement yourself. She knew full well I had exactly zero knowledge of anything to do with that, and was therefore smugly assuming I would give up on the idea. I did not. Instead, I spent the next 18 months of my life down in the basement every day after work and all weekend long. Framed it, wired it, ran the plumbing, hung the drywall. Okay, I did hire out the mudding and taping. Put down the linoleum and the carpet, installed the cabinets, all the plumbing, all the painting, you name it. And I took my time and did it right, so that when it was done, it was close to the same quality as if I had had it professionally developed. The home theater, which I bought and had set up by a high-end retailer, was awesome. Naturally, we moved a year later. Yeah, isn't it great when somebody gives you a seemingly impossible task, but you still manage to pull it off? I got married and had kids. I'm not gay, Dad. Yeah, I'm still working on trying to pull this one off, too. This is a story of one of my friends, not mine. It had been a good 5 years since everyone started having smartphones instead of the old ones with the buttons. Two friends of mine were having a heated conversation. One of them owned a smartphone, and the other one insisted on keeping his old, traditional cell phone. The smartphone guy was listing all those things smartphones provided we now take for granted, while the other guy pretty much repeated, I only need it for phone calls and texts, and it's much more durable. This went on for a good couple of hours, and when the second guy mentioned durability for the millionth time, the smartphone guy, red-faced, grabbed his Sony Xperia Play, the PlayStation phone, and threw it out of an open window, yelling, I'm tired of your BS. I bet it won't have a scratch. We all stood in silence for a full minute, and then we finally decided to go out and see what was left of the smartphone. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. Miraculously, the smartphone wasn't even scratched, indeed. But as you can probably guess, when he pressed the power button, it just never booted. But hey, if there's no scratches, you could still sell it like it's new, right? Not me, but my mother-in-law. Her husband passed away long before I was part of the family, and I would have loved to hear his side of the story, but anyways, he really didn't like eating healthy. I've been told the closest he got to eating fruit was gummy fruit snacks. And vegetables? Forget about it. Well anyways, they adopted my husband and my brother-in-law, and the mother-in-law really started pushing him to eat greens and veggies. If you don't eat them, neither will the kids. You need to model healthy eating habits. He refused. This went on for months and months. They got into a big fight about it, and he said, I'd sooner eat moldy green roadkill than spinach and broccoli. So the next night at dinner time, mother-in-law went out into the driveway where she had run over and killed a frog the previous day. She put that squished dead frog on his plate, then serves it to him at dinner time. Okay, I see your point. I'll eat the salad. I mean, technically when you say I'd rather do something terrible than do this terrible thing you're asking me, it doesn't necessarily mean you would enjoy either one. My ex was making popcorn and went to push the popcorn button on the microwave. I told him that the button is BS and will burn the popcorn. He didn't believe me, so we argued, and finally I said just push the button and we'll see. So we wait, and I can smell the popcorn burning, but I don't stop the microwave because I'm so mad. It eventually stops and he takes the bag out. There was a hole burnt into the bottom of the bag, and the popcorn was very burnt. Then he got mad at me for not stopping the microwave. It took me forever to clean the microwave, but it was worth it. We broke up soon after. I mean, it's pretty true though. Microwaves have gotten so powerful, like, for me to cook a bag of popcorn takes like 1.5 minutes, but then you push the popcorn button, it's like 3 minutes. Well, that's all we have for today. Hopefully this video isn't quite as short as the last one. But hey, at least you guys always have the cat video to look forward to at the end. Well, that bed is no obstacle for you.